Most three sisters gardens fail, not because the idea is wrong. The idea is one of the most successful agricultural systems in human history.
Corn, beans, and squash, grown together by indigenous nations across North America for more than 3,000 years, feeding entire civilizations without fertilizer, without irrigation, without anything we'd recognize as modern farming. The problem is that most modern attempts don't follow the original rules. They plant everything at once, and the beans strangle the corn. They use the wrong varieties. They lay it out in neat rows when the entire system was designed around mounds. And almost every modern guide leaves out the most important part, a fourth plant that wasn't optional in the original traditions, but is missing from nearly every version you'll find today. This isn't decoration, it's architecture. And once you understand how the architecture works, you can build it yourself.
The most common mistake is timing.
Almost every modern Three Sisters guide tells you to plant the corn, the beans, and the squash on the same day. That's the version that fails fastest. Beans germinate quickly and grow aggressively. If they come up at the same time as the corn, they wrap around the young corn stalks before the stalks have any structural strength, and the beans pull them sideways into the ground. The corn never reaches the height it needs. The whole system collapses in week 3. The original method was sequenced. Corn first alone for about 2 to 3 weeks. Only when the corn stalks reach knee height, strong enough to act as a living trellis, do the beans get planted around them. Squash comes last. The sequence is the system. Skip it, and you don't have a Three Sisters garden. You have a tangled mess.
The second failure is variety selection.
Most modern gardeners reach for what's in the seed rack at the garden center: sweet corn, bush beans, and a small ornamental squash. Almost none of those will work. Sweet corn is bred for tenderness, not structure, and snaps under bean weight. Bush beans don't climb at all. They need a trellis the corn was supposed to be. The original system used flower corn or dent corn, varieties bred over generations for tall, strong, drought-tolerant stalks, and pole beans, specifically climbing varieties that evolved alongside the system. The squash was usually a sprawling winter type, not a tidy zucchini.
The third failure is layout. Modern guides show neat rows.
The original Three Sisters were planted in mounds, circular raised beds, usually about 3 to 4 feet across, with several corn stalks in the center, beans planted around them, and squash radiating outward at the base. The mound isn't aesthetic. It warms the soil faster in spring, improves drainage, concentrates organic matter at the roots, and creates the precise spatial relationship the three plants need. Plant the same seeds flat, and you lose the airflow, the heat, and the drainage that made the system work in the first place. 3 mistakes, 3 reasons most attempts produce disappointment in late summer, but the gardens that get all 3 right produce something that looks closer to a small ecosystem than a vegetable bed. To understand why the Three Sisters work, stop thinking about them as 3 plants. Start thinking about them as 3 problems and 3 solutions, arranged so that each plant solves the problem that others can't. The corn solves a structural problem. Beans are climbers. In the wild, climbing beans grow up trees, fences, anything vertical they can wrap around. Without that vertical structure, they collapse on themselves and rot in the soil. A modern bean garden solves this with bamboo poles, trellises, cages. The Three Sisters garden solves it with the cornstalk itself. A mature flower cornstalk is 6 to 9 feet tall, strong enough to hold a fully loaded bean vine without bending, and it grows in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. It is, in every functional sense, a living trellis the gardener doesn't have to build.
3 plants, 3 problems, 3 solutions, stacked on top of each other in the same square meter of soil.
And then there's the nutrition. Corn provides carbohydrates and calories. Beans provide protein and the specific amino acids, lysine and tryptophan. That corn is missing, making the two together a complete protein. Squash provides vitamins and healthy fats from the seeds. Eaten together, the three sisters form one of the most nutritionally complete diets in the pre-industrial world. The garden doesn't just grow itself, it feeds you completely. Here's how to build it correctly. Start with location. The three sisters need full sun, at least 8 hours of direct light per day, and soil that's been worked at least a foot deep. The system is heavy feeding in its first season, so if your soil is poor, work in 2 to 3 inches of finished compost across the entire bed before you build the mounds. Now build the mounds. Each mound is a circle about 3 to 4 feet across, raised 6 to 12 inches above the surrounding soil. Space the mounds at least 4 feet apart, measured center to center. If you're building more than one mound, lay them out in a grid, not a single line. This lets pollinators work efficiently between them. For a typical backyard garden, 3 to 4 mounds is plenty. Plant the corn first. Pick a flower, dent, or field corn variety. Heirloom types like Roy's Calais, Bear Island Chippewa, or Cherokee White Eagle are traditional choices and breed true if you save seed. Sweet corn will work in a pinch, but it's structurally weaker and harvests too early to support the full bean cycle. In the center of each mound, plant 4 to 6 corn seeds in a small circle about 6 inches apart, an inch deep. Water thoroughly, then wait. The waiting part is critical. Do nothing for 2 to 3 weeks. Let the corn establish. Thin the strongest 3 or 4 stalks per mound, removing the weaker seedlings at the soil line so you don't disturb roots. When the surviving corn reaches roughly knee height, typically 8 to 12 inches tall, with a thick base and the first dark green leaves fully open, you're ready for the beans. Plant the beans around the corn. Pick a pole bean or runner bean variety. Kentucky Wonder, Scarlet Runner, Cherokee Trail of Tears, and Hidatsa Shield Figure are all reliable. Avoid bush beans entirely. Plant 6 to 8 bean seeds in a wider circle around the corn cluster, about 6 inches out from each corn stalk, an inch deep. Water in. A week or 2 after the beans, plant the squash. Pick a winter or sprawling summer variety. Seminole pumpkin, Hubbard, butternut, or any traditional pumpkin will work. Small zucchini-type plants don't cover enough ground. Plant 2 or 3 squash seeds around the outer edge of each mound, or in the spaces between mounds if you're building several. The squash will spread outward, eventually covering the soil between your mounds in a continuous green canopy. Water deeply once a week if rain doesn't do it for you. Don't fertilize after planting. The beans will handle nitrogen, and excess fertilizer makes the corn grow leggy and weak. Mulch any bare soil with straw until the squash takes over. The corn will tassel and form ears. The beans will climb and pod. The squash will sprawl and fruit. By late summer, what looked like 3 small mounds in May has become a dense, layered, living system that produces 3 different crops from the same square meter and feeds the soil back as it goes.
And here's what almost no modern guide will tell you.
In many of the traditions that originated the three sisters, particularly among the Hopi, the Anishinaabe, the Pueblo, and several nations of the Great Plains, the system was never just 3 plants, it was 4. The 4th sister varies by region and by tribe, but the role she plays is always the same. She draws in the pollinators the other 3 need to set seed. Corn is wind-pollinated, but beans and squash both depend on bee activity to produce a full crop. Without strong pollinator pressure, the bean pods come in sparse and the squash blossoms drop before they fruit. The 3 sisters can grow without a 4th, but their yield is a fraction of what's possible when she's there. Among the Hopi and many southwestern traditions, the 4th sister is the sunflower. Planted at the edges or at the back of the mound, sunflowers tower above the corn, broadcast pollen-rich blooms across the whole growing season, and pull in native bees from significant distances. The Anishinaabe in the Great Lakes region often used bergamot or Rocky Mountain bee plant, both prolific nectar producers. Other traditions used cleome, sometimes called spider flower, for the same reason. The principle is consistent. A fourth plant, chosen specifically because it advertises the garden to pollinators, sits at the edge of the system and amplifies everything else. If you're building a Three Sisters garden today, plant a sunflower or two at the north side of each mound. North so they don't shade the corn, or scatter Rocky Mountain bee plant, cleome, or a clump of bergamot along the bed's edge. You'll see the difference in week 6 when the bees show up in numbers most vegetable gardens never get.
3 sisters built the system. The 4th made it complete.
Think back to the gardens we started with, the ones that failed. Tangled corn collapsing under heavy beans, bush varieties with nowhere to climb, rows of plants that never quite worked as a system. Now think about what's actually happening on a properly built Three Sisters mound. The corn pulling carbon from the air and building a vertical structure. The beans pulling nitrogen from the same air and feeding the soil. The squash spreading a living roof across the ground, holding moisture, blocking weeds. The fourth sister calling in the bees that complete the cycle. 4 plants doing the work of an entire farm on a square meter of dirt. This is what 3,000 years of careful observation built. Not a recipe, an engineered system refined across generations that still outperforms most modern monocultures when you build it correctly. If this changed how you think about planting things together, watch the other side of the story next, the plants you should never plant together, and the silent chemical wars happening underground when you get the pairings wrong. That video is on the screen now.
The garden was never supposed to be a fight. It was supposed to be a system. Now you know how to build one.